I am Allison Giusti with Group 6 in Ethics. I am doing the What Matters in Ethics. I have found the six pillars of trustworthiness being trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship, acting with integrity, moral courage, our Akipa Code of Conduct, which includes responsibilities, public interest, integrity, objectivity, and independence, due care, and the nature and scope of services. These kind of fall into the six pillars of trustworthiness, but it's written into the code of how people in corporate financing should be behaving. We have more reasoning and behavior. Unethical situations are not black and white. Fraud is not always blatant in your face, somebody stealing from the company. Sometimes it can just look like a superior asking you to record something a little later or a little sooner. Sometimes things can look completely legal. But as we enter into the corporate accounting profession, we need to be ever present in our jobs to recognize when someone is asking us to do something unethical and have the courage to stand up when we're being pressured or doing something wrong. The tone at the top is another important one, setting the tone with our own behavior so those around us and below us can model the same ethical behavior. If we see the tone at the top being an unethical one, this could be a major red flag, and it may be time to start looking for a new job. Understanding how fraud occurs with the revenue overstatements, the expense understatements, the improper asset valuations, and also the fraud triangle. When you're looking at the incentives and pressures, when you've got employers that want you to make the numbers, then there's high competition and saturated markets, significant declines in customer demand, and continuous operating losses. Opportunity in the fraud triangle, where you have people dealing with lots of estimates and not true figures, firms dictating terms, the non-arm length transactions. So you've got one member of your company selling something to the other member to try and get rid of losses for the quarter, and a lack of oversight and accountability. Then we get into the rationalization and the justification. Comes from poor tone at the top. They're only asking you to do it this one time. Management has excessive interest in the accounting policies that are being performed, and poor relationships with auditors. Another what matters is professional skepticism. You never take someone's word for it, especially in the auditing world. You always find the evidence that you look for the evidence of what this company is telling you. You find it yourself and you don't just take, oh, here's this receipt or this invoice. You go track down that invoice yourself. And then my final one that I have found to be a big what matters is earnings management being a slippery slope. When we start manipulating financial statements to get the books to say what we want, that should be a major red flag that there's unethical things occurring within the facility. So from here, I'm going to turn it over to Joseph to do the why it matters.
All right. So, like Allison mentioned, I will be covering the why ethics matter. Why ethics matters is because it helps guide how people make decisions, treat others, and build trust in personal, professional, and social situations. And I will be covering a couple points that I found to be very important to this. The first one I'm going to be covering is trust. Practicing ethical behavior in business can be beneficial as it builds trust with your customers as well as the people among your workplace. Honest communication between your customers or clients can prove to be very beneficial to both you and your client as you will begin to develop a relationship with them, and they will begin to be more likely to come to you instead of going to another competitor or an outside source. Accountability by keeping yourself accountable and accepting the mistakes that were made on your behalf. A company as well as yourself can mitigate any damage of trust between you and your client, rather than having to find out you swept it under the rug and having to fix the pieces later on. As mentioned before, ethical behavior can be beneficial in the workplace. Fair treatment of employees can lead to loyalty as well as better morale in the workplace, which then could lead to better productivity. Second point that I'm going to be discussing is going to be reputation and credibility. Practicing ethical behavior greatly reduces the risk of fraud, regulatory violations, and lawsuits. Any error in the financial statement that was covered up, or whether or not that be intentional or non-intentional, could result in penalties and loss of revenue long term. And the more errors that get caught earlier, the better. This promotes more long-term success rather than the short-term goals of meeting certain numbers or any goals that managers may push for you to try to hit. Um, while some companies may get away with some shady business practices, this only, like I mentioned, supports the short term, and eventually it will come to light, and it will either result in penalties or fines of some sort. Um, Last but not least, it would be the leadership. Setting the tone at the top really impacts the culture of the company as a whole. Leaders must live by an example and not as the saying, do as I say, not like I do mentality. They should, uh, they should, like I mentioned, lead by example. By doing so, everyone else will follow their lead and see that the leader will have their back should they ever encounter some kind of ethical issue. They would be more inclined to report it. Um, the company culture would be much different, obviously, if they have a leader who's adhering to such ethical practices. And like I mentioned before, it's more likely that morale would be better in the workplace. More employees would be happy to come to work and they'd be more loyal to the company itself. And you'll see a greater productivity overall. And last but not least, Tyler will cover the rest.
Yep. And so the final one is how. So today I'm going to talk about how a professional accountant performs their job ethically in today's world. So ethics in accounting is more important than ever because businesses, investors, and the public rely on accountants to provide honest and accurate financial information. Without ethical behavior, companies can lose trust, employees can lose jobs, and the entire economies can be affected. A professional accountant acts ethically by following principles such as integrity, honesty, objectivity, and confidentiality. This means accountants must report financial information truthfully, even when they are under pressure from managers or clients to change numbers or hidden problems. In today's competitive business environment, accountants may face situations where profits are more important to the company than transparency. Ethical accountants understand that their responsibility is not just to the company, but also to the shareholders, employees, customers, and the public. So another important part of ethical accounting is independence. Accountants and auditors must remain unbiased and avoid conflicts of interest. For example, they cannot allow personal relationships, financial incentives, or outside pressures to influence their decisions. Ethical accountants are also follow professional standards and laws to make sure financial statements are accurate and fair. Technology has also changed the accounting profession. Today, accountants work with advanced softwares, digital records, and large amounts of data. Because of this, protecting confidentiality and financial information is very important, and also to help prevent cyber fraud. Ethical accountants must make sure sensitive information stays secure and is not misused. Finally, ethical accountants help create trust. When businesses know their accountants are honest and responsible, investors also feel more confident and companies are more likely to succeed long term. Past accounting scandals have shown that damage that can be done when ethics are ignored. And this is why ethical behavior remains one of the most important qualities of a professional accountant in today's world.